Hello, wonderful interpreters. As promised, this is the video update that I promised you earlier today about the meeting that I had with Susan Campbell and the privilege that I had to bring a few interpreters with me. So before I do that, I just wanted to explain a little bit of what's been happening with me since I was asked anyways. Somebody asked me why or how come I wasn't making any videos since like July or something. I think July was the last time that I made a video. And all I have to say is that besides some personal issues that I've been having, I was actually hit with a recoupment, a clawback from LNI because of helping a patient for more than a few hours a day with a condition that was accepted, and they decided to reject or close without letting me know, because interpreters, as you know, we are ancillary providers, so we do not get notifications that an attending doctor would get to let us know that we shouldn't bill for a claim anymore, or that a decision has been made regarding the closure of a claim or something like that. So with that said, I've been occupied dealing with this recoupment, appealing to the Board of Industrial Appeals, and making sure that I'm taking steps to recover my money. And so I recently just finished, dealing with that. And so that was one of the main reasons why. Now that you know what's been going on, the other question that I was asked today was, hey Juan, so why do you keep, being involved with, Local 1671? We understand, I was told by a couple of interpreters, we understand that the Council WUPSI is helping you guys organize a union, but why get involved with Local 1671? And so all I have to say to that is that since we went to Olympia to try and amend that bill, we realized the few interpreters that remain there going there every day. And I just don't want to rehash the whole thing. I just want to go over that. I want to go over that real quick. We realized that instead of fighting with, what many consider the enemy, we just have to sit down and see what was going on. And so the only reason we were allowed to actually introduce some amendments was because we were able to sit down and say, hey, this is kind of unfair, so we cannot pretty much kill the bill, so why don't we just propose these amendments? And so because of that, diplomacy and willing to negotiate, sit down and hash out differences, we were able to introduce some amendments that some of you at the beginning thought that were pretty much pointless, but now you see that these amendments are the only thing that allowed LNI to say we still have to consider independent interpreters besides the scheduling system, because the amendment says, we can do the scheduling system or both, or just the status quo. So they decided to go with the scheduling system and still use independent interpreters, albeit a limited role that still decided how to be expanded. With that said, I wanted to show you more about this. I wanted to show you a couple of, instances where because of our involvement, sorry, that's not what I wanted to open right now, but I'm gonna go back here. So you remember Miriam Lugo, Jesse Mapes, and myself. We were, three of the few interpreters that were able to work on amendments and stuff like that, and started the union process. Because of our involvement, Local 1671 is the local union that sponsored SB 6245, this bill that's changing the way the LNI system works. And so, if you didn't know, if you probably heard about it, Local 1671 is the union that proposed LNI how to develop the RFP, the request for proposal, and that was done months ago, right? And so because of my involvement, I wanted to be there. Miriam herself, Jesse, we were invited to give our perspective as LNI interpreters as to what this request for proposal from LNI should include for prospective agencies seeking a contract, okay? And how am I going to show you this? Well, I'm going to go right here. Gosh, I'm all over the place right now, right? Let me make this a little smaller right here. A little smaller right here. And I mean, it's been a while since I make one of these videos, so you could say that I'm out of practice. I'm gonna try to be quick with this so I don't waste much of your time. feel free to fast forward to the parts that you think are relevant. But what I want to show you right now is pretty much this folder. And I had it right now. I just lost it because it's a little late right now, and I'm just lollygagging right here. But right here. Okay, so have so many folders right now. So if you see, before I show you that, I want to show you this. If you see this right here, it says overarching concerns for LNI RFP. If you see right here, and it says May 10th, 2019. Now, this document right here that you see contains, many of the points that Local 1671 was to suggest to LNI for developing the RFP. And if you see this document, which I'm going to show you in the computer, but I wanted to show you something, because of the input that Miriam Lugo, Jesse Mates, and myself were able to propose as LNI interpreters, these things were included in the RFP. For example, the preferred interpreter feature. And this is something that says that the system should have the ability for the requester to ask for a specific interpreter based on whatever policy LNI may have. This is just one of the things that we were able to introduce. If you see my notes and all the colored points that we wanted to amend, we were able to be there. And so why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this to show you that sometimes you have to sit down even with people that you disagree with, especially when you recognize that they have the power to affect the lives of those around you, your profession. And you may not like everything that they have to say. You may not like the way they're doing things. But if you see that these people are so influential into what's happening, you might as well get yourself inserted into the conversation without changing your values, but at least having an opportunity to express your opinion in a friendly, composed, adult way, and see what you could get accomplished that way. So with that, that document got developed, and I cannot show you the whole document because some of the things that are here are not for public consumption. You had to be part of it, and this is the reason why you have to be involved. And I know that my face is actually going away, so I'm gonna do my float on top thing that I pretty much forgot to do before showing you these documents. But anyways, I'm here. So you see these overarching concerns. This document that I just showed you in my hand was amended, was redacted, and we were able to introduce a few things. And I'm just going over so you see contract usage analysis, paperless system, APP, notifications, preferred interpreter feature. That's something that we actually advocated for. And many of the things that are there, we were able, Miriam, Jesse, and myself, mileage calculations, we were talking about that the system should be able to interface with Google Maps, MapQuest, so that it calculates mileage based on driving directions, many of the things. So with that said, what happened after that was that we had a meeting. And that meeting was not my meeting. It was with Susan Campbell, and the meeting, as you see, was at LNI headquarters on May this year, 1 to 3 p.m., and it was on May 16th. And present there were Susan Campbell, Ray, Henley, Ryan, Milena, Leroy. I know that a lot of people, some of you guys don't like these guys, and I understand the reasons, but we were invited there, Miriam Lugo, Juan Blois. We made some arguments. I'm not going to read all of it because we're not allowed to just go dive into it. And I think, what I'm trying to show you here is, once again, if you want to affect changes, you can disagree. You can have your own opinions, but you have to be involved. You have to, especially if there is a chance for you to be involved. If the doors are not closed, it's better to have a seat at the table instead of just declare an all-out war and just not be part of the process. To me, that's not very smart. I respect that approach, but to me, that's not very smart. And because of ourselves, being available to be included in this process, we were able to affect, some changes and give out our opinions. Now, with that said, I'm gonna take a break and just go back to our video. So what I'm gonna do right now is, since the last focus groups that Susan Campbell held for interpreters and providers, many interpreters had questions. What's going to happen to independent interpreters? Are we going to be able to bill outside the scheduling system? What are the instances where interpreters are going to be able to bill directly? And some of you have those answers, some of you don't, but there is a lot of confusion, like, will there be a pilot program? I hear some people are talking about updating people about a pilot program that's supposed to happen in January. Some people are saying that independent interpreters are not going to be able to bill directly, that our role would be, completely gone or limited to the point that it's not going to matter. And so one thing that I want to do is I want to show you that I subscribed myself, or registered, should I say, to WEPS, which is for vendors that wanted to propose a contract to LNI. So I'm going to log in right here. I'm not a vendor. I was never looking for a contract, but I wanted information, right? So I'm going to view the history right here. And if you see right here, face-to-face interpreting and scheduling services, like I said, I don't know how long this video is going to be. I'm going to try to make it shorter than usual, but we have a lot to cover. So right here, the estimated value of this contract is going to be $1,400,000 per year, and that's statewide. Okay, so if they decide to do regional contracts, that's going to be divided up to how many regions they decide to do it. Okay, and so here we had solicitation documents that are not available there anymore for people to download, but I do have them because I saved them in my computer before they actually made them unavailable anymore. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you details, and pretty much something that it says right here, vendors downloading. It says this feature supports partnering opportunities for vendors only. The below list of vendors represents only those vendors interested in this solicitation who have opted in to information sharing. It does not necessarily represent all vendors interested in the solicitation. So you have, a few agencies and individuals such as myself that just register here to have information, to have access to whatever, information they would post here last minute. But I want you to know that this closed on October 4th. Okay, the date posted was July 23rd, and the RFP closed on October 4th. But I wanted to show you real quick a list of agencies that registered, whether to, try to be a vendor or not. You see One Lingua, A+ Solutions, ANA Language Services. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I want you to see me right there. Blois Language Services, that's myself, that's my email address. And like I said, that's just for me to get information. There is a whole list right here, and I'm not going to go through it, but I just wanted to show you that so you see how I got these documents that I'm about to provide, okay? So back in August, they released a series of questions and answers, okay, that agencies or vendors submitted to LNI for clarification, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the first document, and I have selected a few questions that are relevant to interpreters and that will remain independent interpreters. So right here from the get-go, you could see Department of Labor and Industries, August 5th, 2019, vendors who downloaded the RFP from WEPS, Susan Campbell, this is from Susan Campbell. These are questions and answers to invitation for RFP, face-to-face interpreting and scheduling services. Now, something that, I want you to know, this is officially coming from LNI. This is not my opinion. And here it says the response to any question given by LNI orally should be considered tentative. This is coming from LNI. The following responses to questions submitted, either verbally or in written form, between July 23rd and August 12th, 2019 are provided by LNI as clarification. This will ensure accurate, consistent responses to all bidders. LNI shall be bound only to its written answers to questions. With that said, everything that I'm going to read right here, which is not a lot, because a lot of these questions have to do with agencies asking technical questions about the scheduling system and what they need to know as agencies. But some of these questions address exactly the role of independent interpreters and how it's going to play out with us. So I'm just going to read a couple to go actually to the meeting that I had today. Sorry that I'm taking long, but I wanted to give you a context into how we're going to get to today's meeting, okay? So I'm going to jump. This is the questions and answers number 1. So I'm going to jump to question number 13 right here. 13, which is relevant to what we're going through. Let me see. I think I... Okay. I probably have the wrong one. Let me see. No, questions and answers number 2. Sorry. I had to go to number 2. Okay. So there you go. Question 13. By the way, before I go to question 13, I wanted to show you that they had a timeline of a sequence of the following dates and estimates. So they wanted to conduct evaluations beginning on October 5th. They wanted to have oral presentation starting on October 25th to November 1st. And the contract start date is actually, January 1st, 2020. That's what they had planned up until now. Later on, you're going to find out they've been delayed. But I want you to see something. There is nothing here that mentions a pilot program. And I know that's being propagated. I myself, a few months ago, believed that maybe they would have a pilot program because that's what they did in the DSHS side of things. But I was confronted with LNI that was not going to happen. They decided long ago there's no pilot program. So whoever is telling you they have information on a pilot program, that's very inaccurate. So I don't know where they're getting their information, but just wanted to let you know. So let's go to question 13, which is actually directed to interpreters. It says right here, I'm going to make this a little bigger right here, okay? Remember, this is a document that was released in August. This is not from today's meeting. I'm going to address today's meeting a little later on in this video. So question 13 says, in your previous response to a question posted on WEBS number 4 regarding the ISAR, is LNI getting rid of the ISAR and mileage documentation? Those two will not longer be needed to receive payment from LNI. So remember, LNI says at the beginning of this document, they're bound by the written answers. So this is clarification. If you had any doubts, this is the authority, okay? So this is not changed up until today. It says the scheduling system contractor and LNI will work on a process, I'm reading right here, will work on a process or form to replace the interpretive services appointment record ISAR. Independent interpreters with LNI who are not receiving appointments through the scheduling system will continue to use the ISAR when an interpreter bills the agency directly. So boom. So that tells you a couple of things from the get-go. Yes, we independent interpreters will still be part of this process. Later on, we're going to read, albeit limitedly, okay, which is urgent care and emergency situations. But yes, and we're going to be using the same ISAR when billing outside the scheduling system for those appointments. Does that make sense to all of you? Just wanted to let you know that. So with that said, we're going to go to questions and answers, document questions and answers number 3, because I have to go quickly through this. A lot of these questions are not necessarily, of an impact to us. Maybe if you guys request me, I could actually do a longer video going through those technicalities that agencies asked. But for the purposes of what was going on with independent interpreters, I'm just going to read what's pertinent to this topic today. So questions and answers number 3, as you see right here, we're going to go to question number 15 from an agency, and it doesn't say any names. It says, does LNI right here, does LNI require all interpreter appointments to be scheduled by providers via the online scheduling system only, or can providers use contractors schedule interpreters via telephonic scheduling system when it's not an emergency? So this is the answer from LNI real quick. There will be limited instances when a provider can go outside the scheduling system for an interpreter, right? These situations will be defined in the future, but will most likely include emergency and urgent care. Outside these situations, providers will be required to use the scheduling system if they want LNI to pay for the interpreter services. So 20% of all LNI appointments are emergency and urgent care, and that's pretty much mostly when people open up their claims. So that's still not out of the pictures. Independent interpreters are going to be able to bill directly and independently and get paid every 2 weeks using the same ISAR directly to LNI when interpreting for those appointments. That is written, that is bound, that is what LNI is saying, and that has not changed. All right. So with that, let's go to questions and answers, document number 4, which I only have a couple of questions, a couple of juicy questions actually, that I pretty much, when I read them, I was like, oh my goodness, there's some haterade here. Haterade. Okay, so number 15, we're going to go to number 15 first, and then go back to a few questions earlier. So number 15 first, it says, let me see. Am I reading this correctly? Is this number 3 or number 4? No, I have to go to number 4. I apologize. I have to go to question number 4. Okay? I apologize about that. It's a little late, so bear with me, please. Okay, so here, LNI indicates that there are limited conditions that a provider can request a specific interpreter. If the provider fails to meet the limited conditions, how will LNI enforce this rule, and how will LNI treat the payment to the interpreter and the scheduling firm and seek recoupment if the provider did not meet the limited conditions? The answer from LNI right here says, we expect the scheduling system to track how often a provider requests a specific interpreter. In your proposal, explain how you will do this and what outreach you will do to providers who seem to be requesting interpreters too often. The payment to the interpreter will not be affected if a provider chooses them often. So you have nothing to worry about that. Okay, that's actually the RFP, and they're just telling the agencies how they see it. Okay, so now with that said, I'm gonna read, this is pretty juicy right here. 5A, B, and C, pretty quick. I'm not gonna abound too much into these because these are self-explanatory. Some agency or somebody from an agency, it doesn't say who, they asked, independent interpreters will continue to compete for appointments, and LNI allows providers to seek these services in limited situations. How will this be enforced? What is LNI projection of the number of limited situations when independent interpreters are used? How will LNI do quality assurance with individual interpreters who will bill directly with LNI? 5B says, will LNI make a policy that the provider will have to first request the last-minute emergency interpreter via the scheduling system before contacting an individual interpreter? What will be the time frame that the scheduling system is expected to fulfill the last-minute emergency request? That's a lot, right? So I'm going to read the last part, which is the juiciest part. It says, also, we want to make sure. So this agency representative or whatever is saying from the get-go, also, we want to make sure that the independent interpreters who bill LNI directly will not take advantage of the emergency situations. There has been instances where an independent interpreter sits in the waiting area of an urgent care clinic fishing for new work injury walk-ins. How will LNI prevent this? So I'm not gonna, get baited into the haterade right here. I understand that many interpreters may, abuse that situation, intimidate some other interpreters not to walk into their emergency room fishing for interpreters. And I understand how some other interpreters, just sit there because they want to get some work. this is the way the system is been working. But I think, judging interpreters this way is kind of wrong, because, somebody said at a Tequila meeting, we'll grow in different ways, right? So the same way that agencies grow using their methods to actually, capture all appointments at a certain clinic, the same way independent interpreters have been forced to adapt and try to get work and patients. So whatever changes are going to happen, I think, we'll need to just, calm down, breathe, and stop attacking each other that much. All right. But it says right here, we have not finalized the policy right here. We have not finalized the policy for when a provider can go outside the scheduling system. We expect it to be for emergency and urgent care services. These are approximately 20% of LNI interpreter encounters. LNI may periodically audit these appointments to ensure that they are limited to situations when a provider needs an interpreter faster than the scheduling system can provide. Now, remember, this is from August. Please include in your proposal the time frame for emergency requests your scheduling system can provide. This is directed to an agency owner or an agency representative. It says LNI will continue its current process of monitoring the quality assurance for independent interpreters. Okay? Now, with that said, that was the last that I wanted to share from the questions and answers document. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to move on to today's meeting with Susan Campbell. I know that it's been a few minutes already, and I'm trying to go as fast as I can, so please bear with me. So let me minimize this a little bit more and go straight to that meeting today. Now, this meeting today, let me see it right here. Right here. Open, please. Now, this meeting today, we elaborated probably 8 to 10 questions because, a lot has happened since August. And I just want to let you know that the format that LNI used for questions and answers to address these questions from agencies and concerns, I try to emulate the same here with input from interpreters that actually attended this morning's meeting with Susan. I was granted this meeting. This is actually independent from WUFC, Local 1671. This is something that I requested. I have been in constant communication with Susan, asking about updates, anything that she could share, meeting whenever we can or she has time. As anybody has the right to request a meeting. This is not exclusive to me or anybody else, okay? We just need to get involved. I understand that we all have work to do. We have families, we have responsibilities. But instead of listening to rumors and people, filling our ears with fear and propaganda, if you get your answers and your questions answered straight from the source, that's better. What I'm offering you right here is just information that I got from the source that you may choose to believe or not. I could assure you that this is completely accurate, and if you call Susan Campbell, if you call Susan Campbell, she will be verifying, all of these things, but please get yourself involved. That's all I have to say. With that said, this is Susan Campbell's meeting. LNI headquarters today, November 26, from 11 to 12:30 p.m., 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. So LNI staff present was Susan Campbell, Ray Hinley, Ryan Smutz, and so this is Susan Campbell's team, although limited a little bit. There are more people working with her, but at this time, these were the people present at the meeting. So this meeting's purpose is to ask questions about the implementation process, share concerns, make sound suggestions, and address rumors to get our information straight from the source in order to better inform interpreters. So even though you saw interpreters there in a couple of the pictures that I submitted today, we did not want to disclose who made these questions, saved for the last 2 questions that I chose to make myself. You already know that I'm involved or whatever, but some of these questions, that I'm going to read, some people may find, egregious or unnecessary or whatever. We all have the right to ask the questions that we need to be answered and fulfilled. So with that said, that's why I didn't write down who asked these questions, but rather the questions themselves. Does that make sense? Okay. So the beginning statement from Susan Campbell about proposals was, Proposals are all confidential now. I can't tell you how many people have submitted proposals or how many people we are having oral interviews with. We can answer general questions about proposals though, okay? So that was from the get-go. They could only answer limited questions about proposals. So these are the questions, concerns, suggestions that we prepared for Susan. It's a combination of questions, concerns that we had, suggestions that we proposed, and answers from them. So when you see a Q right here and the bold black letters, those were the questions. It says right here, first question, how is the process to choose a scheduling firm going? Because we want updates since August, right? When they released that document that I just showed you a few minutes ago. Is L&I delayed on this? Has the department decided to award contracts regionally? And I'm gonna actually correct this here. Has the department decided to award contracts regionally to various agencies or just one agency for the whole state? This is a very good question that an interpreter proposed. And if so, when would a pilot program, even though I knew there's no pilot program, but that was a question anyway, when would a pilot program or trial run start? So this is Susan answering. And please bear in mind that we were typing, we were just, trying to get information fast. But if you want to verify these answers, you have to call, email, or meet with Susan yourself. But these are the accurate responses, okay? Albeit not completely literal, but, the information that we got from the meeting. So Susan says, the process is going well. We got a lot of proposals. And yes, it's delayed. It's taking longer than we anticipated. We're not doing trials at this point. This is still Susan. We're not doing trials at this point. There is no pilot program. We're planning to just implement the program in phases, but we're not calling it a trial. Often with a trial, we would try what we have, and if it doesn't work, we would then have to redo the RFP. We're not doing that. So just from the get-go, there is no pilot program, okay? There is no trial run. They're just going to implement it in phases. So whoever is selling you the idea to go meet with them because they have information about a pilot program, well, now you know better. Now, it continues right here, Susan saying, the decision about how many agencies will be awarded a contract will be made at the very end after we have done all the interviews and we have eliminated some folks and have the remaining ones standing. Then we would have to see what geography do these folks want to cover. Does it make sense? We need to see how we would work with one who wants a statewide contract, and I'm gonna fix right here this contract, and one who wants only a region. We have a lot of decisions to be made, and that's one that hasn't been made yet. So in other words, they're playing the process of elimination, and so whenever they have a final round, they'll see, who wants to do what and decide whether or not they'll do something regionally or just statewide for just one vendor. Does that make any sense? Hopefully that will. So I'm going to go fairly fast because we don't have a lot of time and we don't want to make this video longer than it should be. So it says right here, we have oral interviews all the way through December. Remember those estimates that we read from the questions and answers document? So they are delayed, okay? We won't even be able to internally announce who we think should get the contract until January. Then we would have to negotiate a contract, which can take another month. So I would say probably the first quarter of 2020 is an estimate to get it done. Now, in between parentheses right here, first quarter can be until the end of March, just so you know. When she's talking about first quarter, first quarter is just the first 3 months. Just so you know. That's where they're at right now. Okay? Now, she continues to say, that's just to sign a contract. Oh my goodness, I was just typing so fast right here. That's just to sign a contract. Let me fix this real quick. Part of my goal is to have months and months of implementation. Okay, so it doesn't mean there will be a scheduling system when we sign a contract. Man, I'm just like eating all my R's right here. What's going on, Juan? Okay, it'll mean we'll start discussing how best to do the scheduling system at that point. We need to figure out how it works first. It will take months before it is up and running. Okay? So first quarter of next year, it could take, up until, the end of the first quarter, the beginning of the first quarter, within the first quarter for them to have a contract signed with somebody or a few entities. And then, like it says right here, it doesn't mean that we'll have a scheduling system, okay? They have to start discussing how best to do the scheduling system, and it'll take months before it's up and running. So Ray Henley, Susan's boss, interjected right here. It says, we can't afford a trial. One injured worker is too many. No trials. We decided long ago not to have, once again, a pilot program. Okay? Now, with that said, I'm not going to explain these two more because I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Feel free to rewind this video, and if you have any questions, you know how to email me. By the way, all the links to contact Susan Campbell and ask these questions yourself or request a meeting, those are going to be in the description box below later at the end of the video. Now, the next question says right here, are these agencies bidding required to show experienced scheduling interpreters using a web portal? So in other words, are these agencies required to have had a portal before even applying for the RFP? That's a very important question, because there's a lot of people, that I hear have concerns with some of the people applying for contracts and all that. So, well, this is what Susan says, not Juan Blois, not Miriam Lugo, not Jesse Mapes, not any interpreter. This is coming from Susan. It says, they have to have a web portal. Okay? We did not say they needed a certain number of years having a portal, but they can't say we'll start a web portal next December, end quote. We are asking agencies, how long have you been using this portal? So no, if you didn't have a portal before, you probably, this is Juan talking right now, you probably won't get anything. This is pretty much implied in here. Now, confirm with Susan, but this is what she said. Now, people may have submitted a proposal, she keeps on saying, not knowing we would ask these questions. Agencies need to show that they had a web portal prior to the RFP, regardless of how many years they've had it before. Those that explicitly said it, we don't have a web portal yet, didn't make it to the oral interviews. But there is a few where we couldn't quite tell. We will find out in the end, okay? Let me fix this right here. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. I'm not trying to be picky, but I have to be careful with this. Okay, so in the end, they will decide, they will realize whether or not some people got, pretty much through the system without having an experience with a web portal. In the end, that's going to be a deal breaker. That's what it seems like right here. Okay? So the next question says, an interpreter asked, will the department consider awarding a contracts to an agencies whose owner/owners have been investigated/audited and or charged of a crime by L&I in the past because of billing fraud, regardless of whether or not there was a conviction? Now, this is a very juicy question, that somebody asked. And I was like, whoa, this is going to be interesting right here. This is getting hot up in here. That was my attitude in there. But anyways, this is what Susan responded to this question, okay? It says, I've asked the fraud people to send me their data, agencies or people that submitted proposals, and we're going through it. Okay, we're doing research on everyone we're interviewing. Once we find something, we will proceed accordingly. There is no definite answer to that question until we encounter that scenario. So they don't have a definite answer, but they're aware they are aware of people that may have some sort of activity with LNI. Maybe they were audited, maybe they were charged of a crime. As you know, some people or some individuals or some agencies may have been charged of a crime before, and because of not having a criminal background, they were able to get into deferred prosecution or get their charges reduced, pay some restitution, and if they didn't have a felony, then LNI won't take away their provider numbers, and they still can be an interpreter or an agency. And so maybe some of these people got into the RFP, maybe they got to submit some proposals, but they're actually checking and getting data from the fraud department, and so they'll deal with that accordingly. So that's what she said. I'm not going to add anything to it. You interpret it the way you want to, but this is pretty self-explanatory, okay? So I'm gonna jump to the next one. Now, what I wanted to say at the last, for the last point with that is, if you think you know anybody that has been, in trouble with LNI before, that may be submitting an RFP or whatever, then this is pretty much answering your question right here. I can't tell you anything else because I'm not in the business of trying to see what people were doing before. That's none of my business. But LNI is. If you're submitting a proposal, just be aware that LNI is actually going to check into you. Anyways, so next question. Last year and up until July 29th this year, another interpreter asked, it was estimated that there were about 1,400 LNI interpreters as providers in the system. According to sources close to DSHS, we hear that about 40% of those who have lost their provider number due to not completing their continuing education credits and not successfully passing a new test to obtain a new DSHS certification. Do you have the exact number or an estimate of how many interpreters we have in the system since August 1st, 2019? Because that's when, those that lost their certification would not be able to be interpreters unless they pass the test, right? So it says, and how many new interpreters do you grant a provider number on a monthly basis by estimate? That's a very interesting, juicy question, right? So this is what Susan says. I have no idea how many we do on a monthly basis. Interpreters that lost credentials just need to retest, and they don't need a new provider number. Sorry. So they don't need a new provider number, okay? I can't say exactly, but it's less than 40% now the estimated loss of interpreters or providers, okay? So that's an answer. She keeps on saying right here, there were over 500 interpreters that had their account closed because they did not have a certificate or certification. We then received certificates from about 200 interpreters, but not all of them had their accounts closed because some of them were sending us a certificate that didn't expire, possibly because they had completed their credits. So how many of those 200 interpreters had their accounts closed, she says, before? About 70. Ryan here keeps track of all of that on a spreadsheet. He's the one in charge of that, and he has a record of everybody up to date and everybody that had their account closed. There are still some who are trying to get slots for testing and have not been able to. We don't have a number of those for those. We are still trying to help though. So there you have it. Like 500 people lost their certification, and then 200 more submitted certificates. But when they asked for your new certification, remember that even if you completed your continuing education requirements, DSHS issued you a new certification. So a new certification. So that's what she's talking about. So out of those 200, a lot of those were just people that never lost their certification, but they got a new one from DSHS, and about 70 of those, were the ones that, submitted new certifications because they had their account closed. So you do the math. I'm not going to be in the business of making that math, happening right now because I have to get through these questions right here. So the next question is, has LNI considered creating their own ID for interpreters that would be linked to the department's database and possibly linked to the DSHS database as well? Many interpreters feel This would be a good way to avoid interpreters faking to have valid credentials when showing up to interpret for patients. Well, I don't have to add anything to it. You know what this means. So Susan answered right here, not yet. Our system was built in the 1980s, and it's difficult because our system doesn't have a personal identifier. We rely only on DSHS's database at the moment. There are a lot of people that share the same last name or even their whole name completely. They don't have a personal identifier either. So I want that to change, she continues adding, with the scheduling system. The ones in the scheduling system will absolutely have a personal identifier in that system and an ID that they'd have to carry with them with a picture on it and probably other things as well. So that's coming, by the way. DSHS, she adds, you have to feel sorry for them, with only 2 staff people and no budget, is still making some new changes that are pretty exciting, and they have begun fixing their database. Once they have a more reliable database, we will be able to connect with them like we tried before and have a personal identifier that can match. Okay? LNI may require an NPI, National Provider Identifier, for interpreters, which anyone can get. You don't have to be a doctor to get it, she says. That NPI will be your personal identifier for the whole country. Wherever you go, everybody knows that's you with that number. This is out of my scope of work, she says, implementing this system, but it will be something LNI will implement later on. And then I made a note here. We suggested starting with simple ID like she suggested before. So this is something that is now within the scope of work that she was hired to do, okay? But it's something that she's trying to get going, at least, the ball rolling before the scheduling system, gets implemented, to have at least a simple ID. The MPI will be implemented later because it's out of her scope of work. Now, review this, rewind this video, but I'm not going to explain this any further because I think that's pretty much self-explanatory. The next question, it says, another interpreter asked, in the questions and answers document that I just reviewed with you a little bit, released for vendors who downloaded the RFP, the department addressed the issue of overpayment, saying that the overpayment recoupment policy may change in the future. Staff at LNI have asked the issue to be reviewed at an agency level, end quote. How is that review going? Is this policy close to change? Can we track the development of this process online or print/request any pertinent documents about it? What can you share with us today about this issue? This is pretty important. I consider it. And so I really appreciated this question from this interpreter. So Susan says, we have elevated this issue and nothing has happened yet. The contract that HCA, Healthcare Authority, has with ULS is very clear on this issue. There are clear guidelines about what to do when an overpayment occurs depending on the amount. So what she's saying, on the HCA side of things, that's pretty much done. That's resolved in the contract. We don't have that clear yet. It says, my goal would be to have, she says, my goal would be to have something like this in our system. It's unclear how much control I'll have over what's going to go on the contract regarding this issue. She's talking about the contract, with the scheduling firm. Nothing has happened yet, partially because changing this policy will affect all ancillary providers not attending doctors. Now, and I don't mean to try to make you feel like you don't know anything, but some people do not know what ancillary means. And so an ancillary provider is just a provider, an auxiliary provider as well, you could call them, like physical therapy, massage therapists, interpreters, vocational counselors, providers that are not attending doctors pretty much, that offer, these, site services or complementary services, specialists. And so it says right here, she continues saying, massage therapists, PT, OT, etc., they all have the same issue as interpreters. LNI doesn't tell them when a claim is closed and they have to pay back when billing on a claim that closed or a condition not accepted or denied. Or if an employer or patient wins at the board. An employer of a patient, wins at the board. At this point, the whole thing is still in process. Okay? And then she continues adding, I may be able to pick at it. One thing that I'd like to see is the department not taking 100% of your check. Even the IRS doesn't do that. I concur. And she continues saying, I understand this is a big issue and lots of people don't want to work with L&I anymore because of this. In the meantime, there are some small things that we may be able to change about it. Okay? So with that, adding to that statement, Ray Henley, Susan's boss, added, I want you to know that is a payment policy. Sorry, I should have a comma here. I want you to know that is payment policy. It's not for the scheduling system. In fact, Susan, it's not supposed to be doing that. Susan works under me to keep this moving on, but this is not part of her job description. Susan can actually be in trouble for doing this. I just want you to know that she's advocating on this on her own. Okay? At least someone in the inside is raising the issue, somebody added. We're trying to do the right thing right here. We're trying to elevate the discussions we have with you to the right people, but that was not why Susan was hired. That was not why Susan was hired. So he's making it clear pretty much, and I understand it this way. And I know that some people, without mentioning names, they have a vendetta or some hard feelings against Susan Campbell because, they think that she's in cahoots with the other union, or she wants to end interpreters, or she's got an agenda and she knows what she wants for all of us. I'll tell you this. I think, one of the things that I have learned in life and through this process is that, we have to learn to agree to disagree. You can't have, fundamental differences with somebody. But you have to understand that people have a job to do, they have their ideology, and it doesn't mean that they hate you or want to end you. And if you can find it within yourself to reach deep down and say, I'm going to be a civil human being, I'm going to actually behave like an adult, and I'm going to sit down and have conversations with the people that I need to and voice out my opinions, and maybe something good could come out of it, right? So that's the way I view Susan Campbell. I appreciate that. Even though this is not part of her job description, as her boss says, she's still finding the time to advocate for that, because we do not have a union. This is a union negotiation piece, a bargaining team. We don't have that, and I really appreciate that whatever goes on with the scheduling system and whatever she's told to make or implement, at least she's taking some considerations for interpreters and taking it upon herself to actually make sure that we're not losing a lot, and this is part of it. So there you go. All right, so we're gonna move on to the last two questions with that, and those were made by me, yours truly, as you see right here, Juan. And these are two questions that I wanted to ask. Last time we had a chance to meet, the department had decided that in the future, a provider will be able to go outside the scheduling system to obtain an interpreter if an appointment is an emergency or urgent care. Then interpreters would be able to bill directly, just like we do, using whatever ISAR would be allowed for use at that time. We were also told that the department was still reviewing situations in which independent interpreters would still work outside the scheduling system. With that said, has L&I decided whether or not to let providers schedule the same interpreter for blocked appointments such as work hardening, work conditioning, physical capacity evaluations, pain management programs, etc.? Now, I know that I'm not the only one concerned about this. Pretty much all of you are. So here is the trillion dollar question right here, or answer, sorry, $1 trillion answer. It says about blocked appointments, Susan says right here, those will be through the scheduling system. In the scheduling system, there will be situations where a doctor can say it is really important to continue to have this specific interpreter, but we don't exactly know what those are yet, those situations. So it's still going to be possible, by the way. Just keep on, paying attention to this. We've been discussing it. It's still in the discussion process. We are waiting until we have this contract signed to weigh more on those decisions then, because we have to work with the vendors to make that happen. Okay? So she continues saying, we can tell you that we've had input from psychologists saying that for mental health, they really need the same interpreter. So providers are responding to that. Crime victims really need the same interpreter, she says. We have gotten feedback from pain programs and providers that treat brain injuries that also feel that way, that they need the same interpreter. We haven't heard as much from work hardening providers. We have only heard from a couple of providers in that field. So we'll be doing some more outreach before we make that decision, okay? There you go. I'm not going to add anything to it, but that should dispel the rumor that some people are spreading that, oh, independent interpreters are not going to be part of this anymore. They already decided it's only the scheduling system. They are going to give it to ULS. They don't even have a company yet. Independent interpreters, we're not going to be able to have continuity of care. Yes, those are issues. But to say that's set on stone is kind of irresponsible, especially when they haven't said it. I'm just pointing that out. Okay. Continue reading on this. It says, we are trying to break some habits. It may be that we will be more rigid in the beginning because we have some interpreters that are not behaving in a professional way, attaching themselves to individual workers in a way that's not professional, and we want to break that. Once we do that, it would be easier for us to be more flexible. Decisions regarding this will be made after getting feedback from providers as well. So, if I'm you and I'm reading this for the first time, and I actually go to a certain clinic or a few clinics, or I have relationships with providers that offer work hardening, work conditioning, pain management, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk to that provider and say, hey, do you know that LNI will still decide whether or not you could use the same interpreter for these appointments, these blocked appointments, but they need to hear it from you to even consider it. Could you please write a letter? Could you please go and call Susan? Can you please share and give them feedback as to why it is important to have this situation included? Please do that. Instead of just attacking people and getting into this rumor mill and all these shenanigans, let's get to work. All right. So, and then she continues adding right here, the ISAR will stay the way it is for independent interpreters to use while working outside the scheduling system. This is today, by the way. There will be an option, however, in the scheduling system where a provider can use the preferred interpreter feature. Remember I showed you that? Okay. To clone an appointment and allow an interpreter to cover a patient that has consecutive PT, OT, massage services, etc. for those consecutive appointments. An appointment of this nature can be cloned and so the interpreter for that appointment as well. Rewind this if you didn't get it, but it's pretty clear. Okay, but once again, it will be under special circumstances that will be more defined later. It will be decided later how to handle blocked appointments in a fair way for everybody. I'm still sympathetic to the fact that interpreters need these long appointments. This is coming from Susan. Now, Ray Hanley adds to this, her boss, fairness versus efficiency. We want to be fair when it comes to these blocked appointments, but we also want to be efficient for the employers out there, and that efficiency can be hampered by having interpreters attach themselves to injured workers in a certain way. So we're trying to find a balance between fairness and efficiency. This is a really dicey thing. Susan adds, also, interpreters shouldn't be billing LNI for visits with a lawyer. They should bill the lawyer directly. That's a sidebar, by the way. Lawyers are not LNI providers. We don't pay for lawyer services, and we don't pay for interpreter services with lawyers. It's a lawyer's responsibility to pay interpreters for those visits. And I think, one of the interpreters was asking, about that situation because, it is pretty clear that lawyers are not providers, but some interpreters, they don't like billing the lawyers, or they don't bill the lawyers or whatever, so they still bill LNI. Some people have gotten paid by LNI even though lawyers don't have a provider number, which is very weird. But she was made aware of that, and she wanted to share that, and made it known. Okay, so it's up to a lawyer to pay you for those visits. LNI won't pay and shouldn't pay for those visits. So if you're getting paid by LNI for those visits with a lawyer, be careful. You might get audited later. I don't know. I'm not speaking for them, but that's a possibility. Okay. So the last question that I had, and you know me, I talk a lot, but I try to be as brief as possible. Look at this, brief as possible. I cracked myself up. Anyways, so it says right here, Juan, one of the biggest fears that independent interpreters have is a repeat of the ULS problem DSHS interpreters had last year with their payments. Oh, a lot of interpreters have had that problem, that fear, sorry, I'm one of those. It says, recalling SB 6245, I said on page 3 when it says that, quote, the department must purchase in-person spoken language interpreter services directly from language access providers or through limited contracts with scheduling and coordinating delivery organizations or both. That's one of the amendments that we were able to introduce at that movement in Olympia last year. I continue saying, LNI has decided to implement the scheduling system, and as of now, will still allow providers to use independent interpreters outside the portal for urgent care and emergency situations in which interpreters can bill directly. But the bill continues saying something that I remember suggesting for the reason I'll bring up in a minute. It says, quote, nothing precludes the Department of Labor and Industries from directly reimbursing language access providers or paying directly. Please follow the question so you see what I'm getting at. So after all the options that this law gave the department, and after being emphasized that one of the biggest reasons for a scheduling system was to make it easier to have data on field rates, that's one of the biggest reasons, then, and this is my suggestion, why not consider just to have a vendor, or vendors, I should have added, that can only manage, schedule, provide a pool of qualified interpreters, and let the department still pay interpreters directly, even when using the scheduling system. A job number then can easily be generated, which we can then submit online directly, and that way we have control of our billing instead of the scheduling firm. After all, nothing precludes the department from doing so, as I just quoted from the law. I believe this is an option that will help independent interpreters to cope better with all these changes, allowing us to have more control over when we get paid without breaking the way we bill and get paid by the departments. We know it's sometimes not perfect, the way we get paid by them, to get paid by the department because of billing discrepancies or bills not processed, but at least we know that we will get paid every 2 weeks for bills that did get processed before the respective cutoff dates. So I don't know if that's going to take a minute to sink in. I'm sorry that I made it super long, but I think, the devil is in the details. I don't like the devil, but he's in the details. So that's why I wanted to make it clear for her so she understands the question completely. It doesn't make sense to me that we have a scheduling system that we were sold that we mainly need for field rate data, so the Department of Justice has a data of how many appointments are fulfilled, so we can justify the state paying for these services. Okay, well, if that's the biggest reason, and LNI is not going to save money, then why have interpreters getting paid through the scheduling system? Well, to my information, to our information, this is the answer that she gave. Okay, and we may like it or not like it, but this is what she told us, and it's actually not up to her. She says, Susan, what you propose is actually one of the options that we looked at. The philosophy from the department, LNI, is that we want a third party to run our interpreter program for us. And that means Q&A, quality assurance, and making sure that interpreters are doing a good job. We have not done that well here at all, she admits. This is why we have so many issues that we need to fix. We don't have staff here at the moment to monitor interpreter work. So the decision came directly from our program manager to have someone else do this. That way, a scheduling firm will be responsible for quality assurance, meaning interpreters will work on a subcontract with a scheduling firm, so the firm is responsible for the quality of the interpreters. So the firm is responsible for the quality of interpreters. We don't want to do the quality assurance or deal with the provider numbers except for when independent interpreters work outside the scheduling system. I have to fix that too. Jeez, I didn't even have time to check all of this. Our program manager is the main person responsible here for this, and she made it clear that she wants to contract out our interpreter program. It was a department's decision. However, this issue can be revised or revisited, rather, at the end of the first contract with the scheduling system, and it would have to be defined in a new RFP or request for proposal. This is not something that can be negotiated with a union, but rather agreed and worked through an RFP process. This is coming from Susan. And the last sidebar, this is the last of the answers that we got today in the end of this meeting, but I wanted to read the last part right here. Sidebar, LNI will not require immunizations. Somebody asked about immunizations because, and I'm one of those interpreters that had not been vaccinated for the last 10 years. I don't believe in that. I'm weird, but I don't believe in them. Anyway, so she says we will not require immunizations. That's not going to change, but some hospitals do. And we will require that information to be in the scheduling system. And she's talking about interpreters that are vaccinated. So when a hospital needs somebody with immunizations, a list of interpreters that meet those requirements can be available. So the scheduling system will have interpreters that are willing to do vaccinations as well. LNI will also have a contract manager to manage the scheduling system contract, and interpreters will be able to report concerns. Comments and concerns will always be welcome. Also, last paragraph right here, one of the requirements of the RFP is that they have to provide workers with a way to complain about interpreters or report any misconduct. In general, it would be via calling, emailing, or faxing. Patients with complaints about providers will have to go through LNI's civil rights wing if an incident is related to ethnicity, nationality, or language. If it's about what a patient feels to be a bad quality doctor, then there is already a doctors group that runs quality control for doctors. That's the end of the video. So lastly, I wanted to say, let me close this right here, okay, because we're done with this. Let me make this a little bigger right here. Sorry. So, there you have it. That's actually the whole video update that I had for you. It's actively 4 in the morning. I'm super tired. I have to work early. But I'll tell you this. This was a very, in my opinion, informative session with Susan. I wish that more interpreters would be taking active part into meeting with Susan. You don't have to wait for me to invite you to a meeting or, any other entity or wannabe, organization. You have the right to actually request a meeting yourself. Either travel to Olympia or see if she could come meet with you at a closer location, maybe the Tequila LNI office, the Tacoma LNI office. Call Susan, email Susan. Links are going to be in the description box here, with all these contact information pieces. So you contact Susan, email her, listserv, so you register and get updates, at the last minute when they happen, whenever they happen. And then lastly, what I wanted to say is, as interpreters, we have more leverage than we think we have, okay? We do an important work. I know that a lot of you have said in the past, oh, I'm just going to look for another job, I'm done with this, whatever, ULS is going to take this or such company or fulanito de tal or whatever. Let me tell you something. We all know that we interpreters are the bomb, okay? We are bilingual, we're smart. We multitask. We have many skills. Some of us have, college education. Some of you have multiple skills and occupations that you could actually fulfill successfully. But if we really wanted to be doing anything else than interpreting, I think we would have done it a long time ago. So let's be honest with ourselves. We get paid to talk for a living and help people, and that fulfills you. That gives you a feeling of, I would say, uh, I had the word, but I lost it because it's so late. That gives you a feeling of, feeling important. You feel important because you are affecting somebody's life in a positive way. I got it. A feeling of usefulness. That's the way I feel. I feel useful whenever I interpret because I'm helping somebody overcome that language barrier and get the services they need and get the message across. And so if we wanted to be doing something different, we would have done it. So let's be honest with ourselves. While we have the chance, nothing is set on stone, like you said. So what did we learn from this video, from this meeting? What did I learn? And I think you should verify all of this information with Susan and contact her. Number one, there is no pilot program. I don't know where you heard that, and I never said it. They decided a long time ago there's no pilot program. So if you have people trying to entice you to do whatever with them because they have information about a pilot program, yeah, that's not happening. So no, it's going to be a hard implementation. Everything is delayed. It'll be probably the first quarter of next year before they choose somebody. And still, they would have to have months and months of implementation, okay, discussing how to best work the scheduling system, quoting Susan Campbell's words, okay? Number two, independent interpreters were still very much in play, and our role seems to be expanding, as you saw from the descriptions and the answers that she gave. Work hardening appointments, pain management, brain injuries, all of this is still being considered and possibly implemented later. And the good thing is that pain management providers, brain injury providers, psychologists, and some other providers have expressed to Susan that they need an interpreter to be consecutively attending these visits. So get your providers that you know to express how they feel about this policy to Susan Campbell, because that's going to help, Other thing that we learned is we need to get involved. We have leverage. Yes, we need a union, and WUFC is going to be, resuming efforts for a union soon. They haven't been as active because of all the changes and the DSHS, problems that were happening, and mainly, the new election that they had at the WUFC's leadership board. So right now, pretty soon you're gonna get news about it. I don't know when, I can't tell you, but it's happening. I will continue along with Miriam and Jesse and whoever wants to get involved to get information from LNI, request meetings, get informed. I will keep you updated as much as I can. And so God bless you. The links are going to be in the description box, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.